So the purpose of these meetings is to explore the spiritual dimension of oneness, and in particular how we can use our own individual access to oneness, into the spiritual consciousness of oneness for the purpose of global transformation. And in a way, each of these meetings, as the third one, is like a stepping stone, that a continuation of the work that was done at the previous meeting. And in the last meeting, we explored how oneness is an intrinsic part of life, how really every breath is an expression of oneness, and how with every breath we live our own oneness and also the oneness that belongs to life. And now I want to take it a step further and saying how we can use that oneness in direct relationship to the world. There is one school of spiritual teaching that says through realizing your own oneness, through realizing the self, through working on yourself, that is the real and lasting contribution you can make to the world. Through accessing your own self with a capital S, through learning to be with its energy and working with its energy, you are making a contribution to the whole. And that is completely correct, because the individual Atma is the universal Atma. So when you are working on your own inner center, the core of your own being, you are automatically working on the whole. But there is, which I have been shown, another set of spiritual teachings that in a way goes beyond that work, to say there is a way to work directly with the spiritual body of the world. And I would just begin with that and say it is now understood within the spiritual community that the world is a living being. This is the Gaia theory. The world is alive. It's not just dead matter floating in space. It is a living being. And whether you go back and you talk about our mother, the earth, or any of those spiritual ideas, it is understood it's a living being. What is less understood is that it is a living spiritual being. It is not just a physical living being, in the same way as you are not just a physical living being. And here I would like to refer to a whole body of teachings which are in Sufism and also in alchemy, which has to do with the relationship between the individual and the whole as that of microcosm and macrocosm. That the individual is the microcosm, and the whole, or the world, you can say the whole cosmos if you like, or you can say the world, is the macrocosm. There is a direct relationship between the two. And what that means is, just as you have a physical and a spiritual body, so does the world have a spiritual and a physical body. And just as your health, your well-being depends very much on the relationship between your inner and outer life, your physical life and your spiritual life, the life of your soul, so it is exactly the same for the world. And it's very important to in a way, enlarge your conscious relationship to life, to the world, to include that awareness. Most of you here have an awareness of that, of yourselves. You no longer think of yourself just as a physical body. You're aware that there are energy centers within you, and I'm sure by now many of you have done work to activate some of those energy centers. As I belong to a Sufi tradition, we work specifically on the heart chakra and activating the love and energy that is within the heart chakra. But there are many other different practices to work on the energy centers within you. So many of you are aware consciously you have a spiritual body, and you know how important it is that is to your your well-being. You need to nourish the soul as well as the body. And somehow we have not yet collectively or taken that awareness into our relationship to life as a whole. The understanding that all the divine qualities, what the Sufis call the divine attributes that you have within you, are also within life. And there is a direct correlation between the two. And this opens us to a whole different way of working with life as a spiritual body. Now, I suppose I have been given some insight into this because I have been trained how to work with individuals as spiritual bodies. Because if you do spiritual teaching, you have to learn to relate to not just the mental, emotional, physical. In fact, that is really not so important as relating, understanding, and working with the spiritual energy of the human being, which functions on different levels. And there is a very exact science about how you work with that, about how you activate different spiritual centers in an individual at different times, and the initiations and the practices that go with that. And I think whatever spiritual school you belong to, that is kind of that is within the esoteric teachings of that tradition, how a human being is woken up spiritually. And once they're woken up, how that work continues so they have full access to the center of consciousness that has been woken up. So I'm saying this is nothing new within the individual. Whatever esoteric school you follow, that is what you are working on. You're working on your spiritual body. And I just want to take it a step further and say there is actually a whole set of teachings about how the world functions as a living spiritual being and how the inner and the outer relate together, nourish each other, and also, along with that, how to activate the world, spiritual centers in the world. And as I've given many times, there are examples of civilizations in the past that have activated at different times different spiritual centers in the world. And because I come from England, Stonehenge is a very particular example of a sacred site designed according to sacred geometry that was designed specifically to activate a spiritual center within that part of England that helped the people who lived there and also helped the spiritual body of the world. And in different parts of the world you can find monuments, spiritual buildings that belong to that, in the same way as Chartres Cathedral is a more recent example, built on the site, ancient sacred site of the Black Madonna, a building designed in relationship to the sacred geometry of the world as well as the sacred geometry of individuals. Now, one thing I have discovered in the last 20 years is that the world, how the world's spiritual centers are going to be activated in this era is not through sacred buildings. And I actually studied sacred architecture. I was an architectural student for a number of years. And I came to realize that actually a much more efficient way to activate and work with the spiritual body of the world is with groups of people. Because groups of people are the spiritual containers of the energy of this era. And I'm not the only person who's saying that. Many people have become aware of the power and the importance of small groups coming together for the purpose of spiritual work. And that means that when a group, like this group here, comes together for a spiritual purpose, if you like, for the sake of the one, because real spiritual work is always for the sake of the whole, always for the sake of the one. There are what one might call pseudo-spiritual teachings that are for the sake of the ego, and they can't really have any effect on anything. But any real spiritual gathering, and I always like to go back to that saying of Christ's, when 2 or 3 are gathered together for my sake, there I am also. It's a very simple saying, but what it means is when a group of people come together for the sake of what is highest, whether it's the inner Christ or any other spiritual principle, that spiritual principle is also there. Which means you can work with that spiritual principle, and a spiritual principle is a center of spiritual energy. And so a spiritual group like this that comes together for the sake of the one is a perfect vehicle for working for the sake of the one. And that's what we're going to try and do here today. Because, as I said, there is a way to access and work with the spiritual body of the world. And it has this very simple correlation because it is a one-to-one. Now it's very interesting because in the Sufi tradition we say the relationship to God has to be one-to-one. Lover and beloved has to be one. He is one and he loves those who worship him as one. It is a one-to-one relationship. For the Sufi, the relationship to the beloved is not a collective relationship. It is something that happens, a very intimate relationship that happens within one's own heart. And so we are used to a one-to-one relationship with the divine. It's not a collective relationship. It has to be this inner, intimate love affair. Because when you have a real love affair, you don't want anybody else watching, really. It is like in this beautiful description of Krishna and the gopis, the milkmaids, in which all of the milkmaids thought they were just alone with Krishna. That is part of the whole mystery of the lover and beloved relationship. But because we each have this direct relationship from one to one, and that means both to the transcendent God and also to the immanent God. And the immanent God means the divine that is here, the divine that is within the world. And just as there is this transcendent divinity, this, if you like, the dark light of the Deus absconditus, or even the dazzling light of one's higher self, it is just aspects of the divine. So there is a light within the world. There is a spiritual light within the world. Within the spiritual body of the world, there is a spiritual light. Otherwise, the world would die. There would be no colors to life. There would be no music to life. It would just be a completely utilitarian existence if that light of the divine were not present within life. This is the light hidden within matter. This is one of the great alchemical secrets, that there is this energy, this divine energy within life, within matter, and you can access it directly. Because this is part of the mystery of the relationship with the divine, just as you access a transcendent divinity directly. So you can access this light within life, and you can work with it. Just as you work with the transcendent divinity. In Sufism we talk about this relationship of light upon light. Light calls to light, and light comes down upon light, and it is light upon light. So you can make a relationship with this spiritual energy within life. And it's a very beautiful, very simple relationship, because it's completely direct, it is very pure, and it goes, if you like, from your soul, from your light, to the heart of the world, to the light that is in the center of creation. But you have to have permission to do this work. And this again belongs to these spiritual esoteric teachings. Otherwise, the light in the middle of creation would be misused. And remember, as a culture, look around us, we are very good at misusing almost everything that is given to us. You know, we have been given these fossil fuels and managed to pollute the planet with it. And many, many teachings on all different levels end up being corrupted and misused and creating darkness rather than light. So there is a simple precaution, because this light at the core of creation, it is so important, it is so sacred. It is the pure waters of life, or from that light comes the pure waters of life. If that light in the core of creation were misused, were polluted, then life would just fall apart. So it is protected. It is protected by spiritual beings whose job it is to protect it. And this is again belongs to a certain spiritual tradition which we have lost touch with in the West because we tend to think even spiritual life is just about us. And we don't really have an understanding, like for example in Tibetan Buddhism, they had an understanding of the many different levels of devas and all the different work that they do and working together with the spiritual entities. We have become so isolated within our own contextual frame of reference. I think it makes spiritual life really hard because it seems to think you have to do it yourself. So there are these spiritual beings that are protecting this energy in the core of creation. So you have to come together for a very pure purpose, which a gathering like this is, because nobody's making anything out of it, nobody's selling anything, nobody's gaining anything. We're just coming together in service to the One. And then when permission is given, one can have access to this energy in the core of creation, which is very, very, very beautiful. It contains not just the present world, it contains all the possibilities of the world to come. Just as I don't know if you know your own light, if you have access to it, your own higher consciousness contains not just your present life, but also all future potential you will have in this life and also, if you believe it, in lives to come. It is, I suppose it is like the acorn compared to the oak tree. And you, as I say, your light, that light in the center of your being, contains within it all the possibilities you have for your spiritual life, all the inherent possibilities. And that's one of the beauties, of course, of working directly with your own light, is you are working directly with all the latent possibilities you have within you. And as I say, this light in the core of creation has not only the divine intelligence of the moment, but also the potential for this planet to evolve. And this is where it gets very interesting and very exciting, because there are different possibilities for this planet to evolve. And just as in a way within yourself there are also different possibilities for yourself to evolve. And this is one of the dramas of free will and how you work with your own life for its highest potential or for a mediocre potential. And the world at the moment is at the same time going through this very, very fluid, amorphous time. And this is something we don't realize so much because our consciousness is fixed in this remnant of a dying civilization. It has become very complex and very over-sophisticated and absorbs enormous amounts of energy and also attention. And it is very difficult to actually take one's attention away from this dying civilization with its many demands into being aware of the possibilities for what could be. And it is like this drowning civilization is kind of trying to take with it the light of as many human beings as it can. And at the moment it's actually being very successful. It's absorbing enormous amounts of light, enormous amounts of energy. And that is just what happens at the end of every civilization. And then there are a core of people who, if you like, something else within life has spoken to them. And I call these like the seeds of hope that life has communicated to the souls, to the light of people. That there is a possibility. There is a possibility for something else. Now it's very interesting if you go through your own individual process and you're aware of moments of crisis in your life. And I'm sure many of you here have had one, if not more, moments of crisis. And if you can go back to that moment of crisis, you will see the crisis itself absorbed an enormous amount of energy. It drew you into it, taking all of your attention, all of your energy, all of your life force into it. And at the same time, in that crisis, there was another voice that wasn't so loud that you could listen to. And that voice said, things don't have to be like this. There is another way for things to evolve. You don't have to be in this suffocating pattern that is imploding. There is another way that life can evolve. And probably you wouldn't be here if you hadn't listened to that other voice. If you hadn't, in a way, caught those seeds of hope that your soul, your higher self, was communicating to you. And then you experience this extraordinary process of spiritual transformation, in which out of what seemed to be an impossible situation, something else completely unexpected happened. Something you couldn't even have imagined from within your crisis. This miracle of transformation. And in that moment, you had the experience that you are a divine being, changing, metamorphosizing like the caterpillar becomes a butterfly. It's one of the most extraordinary moments on the journey, when Jung called it an antiodromia, when something turned into its opposite. When out of the darkness, light suddenly appeared. And light took you with it. And light recreated you. And light recreated you in a way you could not have imagined possible. And it's very important that it is beyond your imaginings, because it belongs to the divine. And the divine is not caught in our imaginings. And I always say one of the sad things at the moment is people seem to be not prepared to work directly with the divine in this moment of crisis. They are still caught within their patterns of imaginings. And they see the world either bleakly or positively, but it is still within that prism of their own imagination. And thus they're not really open completely to real transformation. Which is one of the reasons I have said, to be really involved in this work, you have to be able to get rid of any preconception that you have. You have to be able to be deconditioned. And then it becomes very, very exciting, because you are working with the creative energy of life. You are working with the creative energy of life that has not yet become constellated into form. And this is a very rare opportunity, because almost always we are working with something that has already become constellated into form. And we may try and change that form and adapt it to suit our needs better, or to have a more positive outcome. In a way, change the layout of the cards on the table. But we are still working within the limitation of form. But at the moment, as the world goes from one era to the next, it is very, very, very fluid. We can't see it with these eyes, because these eyes are caught in the grip of the images of the past. But if we turn our attention inward, or into the core of creation, we will see something very different is taking place, and something that actually is demanding our attention. If you like, the soul of the world has called out, and those who have a harmony with that resonance are able to respond. If you like, just from soul to soul. The soul of the world calls out, and something within the human being responds, because all spiritual life in the end is about a call and an echo. You wouldn't begin spiritual life if something hadn't called to you and you hadn't responded, in whatever way that happens for you. And it's exactly the same within life. Except this is on a much bigger scale. It's still very simple, because what happens in the core of creation is very simple. Because the more you go back to the essence, the simpler it is. But it belongs to the whole of creation, this whole miracle of creation. That includes everything. Because it is about oneness, because it is about the magic of life and the magic of creation. So if you can step out for a moment outside of the parameters of what you think you are, of what you think spiritual life is, of even what you think this planet is. I'm used to it, because as a mystic we're taught that we have no understanding. that is always bigger than anything we can imagine. He is beyond even our idea of the beyond. But, so if you can just step out of that, whatever concept you have, and feel within you what is real, and feel within you what is lasting, feel within you what is permanent. Because something within you belongs to life. I say something quite specifically because a lot of us has been caught in the images that have been created, that are no longer alive. They no longer nourish the soul. They no longer actually speak to us. But something within you is alive. It is very, very, very beautiful. Something in you is very pure and very alive. And it belongs to you, and it also belongs to life. And that is where this alchemy can take place. This alchemy that is the alchemy of life. In which the light within you can speak directly to this light at the core of creation. This self within you can interact with this beautiful being that is the world. If you knew how beautiful she is, you would just be in awe. I say, yes, at the moment she is sad because she has been mistreated for a few centuries. But she is so beautiful, and she is so ancient and so beautiful. And she is going through a very intense time of transformation, much more than most of us are aware. That belongs to thousands of years. And she has asked us to participate in it. To me, this is the real meaning of co-creation. When people talk about co-creation, it's become kind of familiar word nowadays. This is the real work of co-creation, to be with this energy in the core of creation, with this being that is life in its purest sense. To be there for her. See, as a Sufi, we are taught to be here for our beloved. It is the purpose of our life, to be here for our beloved. There are servants among my servants who love me, and I love them, and they look towards me, and I look towards them. In a way, our central spiritual practice is remembrance of God, not as something that is forgotten, but as something that is present. And one can take that remembrance, that presence, right into the center of life. So we are here for life. Not life as we think it is, but life as it really is, as this beautiful, beautiful divine being that needs us to help to recreate, that helps us to help to wake it up. Because any real spiritual transformation is a process of awakening. Something in you wakes up. Something in you wakes up, and when you wake up, you see a completely different world around you. It is very, very beautiful. It is the same world, but it is completely different. And the world needs something within us to help it to wake up, to help the world to remember why it is here. Because just as we forget why we are here, we go through this veil of forgetfulness that can last for many years, for some people many lifetimes. Complete forgetfulness. They don't know why they are here. So the world too also can mirror our state, and it can also forget why it is here. It may sound strange, but it is true. If you like, the eyes of the goddess at the center of creation are veiled over. She has withdrawn within herself. It is why a certain magic is not so accessible as it used to be. There used to be a time when the magic of creation was completely understood and everybody worked with it. It was how life was nourished, how life spoke to us, how you listened to the plants and the animals, how you were intrinsically one with the whole of creation. It was natural. not something strange or... It was just natural. Life was alive and life spoke to you. And some people were trained to listen to the plants, and some people were trained to listen to the animals, and some people were trained to listen to the weather, and some people were trained to listen to the devas and the stones and how to work with those. And it was a multifaceted universe. Nobody could imagine doing anything without evoking the spirit of the place, without saying some prayers to the devas. You wouldn't have thought of doing anything. You wouldn't hold a wedding on a day that wasn't propitious. It was just part of this whole living universe. When we think of living universe, we just think of the plants, but now we have forgotten the spirits in the plants. And that is because the goddess has withdrawn within herself. So that quality of magic has become veiled. So we have to work and work and work to get less and less and less, rather than being present with this magical, magical being that is life itself. And she has withdrawn to a place it's actually become dangerous. Because when life forgets its purpose, it is like when a human being forgets their purpose, then they can be open to addictions, then they can be open to so many self-destructive patterns that have become common in the West. Because we have forgotten why we are here, so we devour ourselves, we eat ourselves up. And eventually the light in the human being fades away, and the purpose of the soul gets forgotten. It is one of the great tragedies of a human incarnation when that happens. And if the world completely forgets, then something within the world will die. Then there will be no hope. Then there will be no rebirth. Then the whole energy system of the world will slowly contract. It will become more and more polluted, more filled with these negative human thought forms, with this ideology of consumerism, however you see it. And the world on its own cannot wake up. That I know. Too much damage has been done. Too much pollution has been caused. Too many of the sacred sites in the world have been desecrated. Too much has been bought and sold. But just as the Beloved speaks to us to wake us up, so we can also speak to the world. And we can say to the world, I am here to help you. Not, I have a plan. I always think the world has had enough of plans. And I'm not even sure the world wants to be saved. Because who are we to try to save the world? We're not even very good at saving ourselves. I think the world can be spoken to. Spoken to with sincerity. Spoken to with openness of heart. Spoken to with the words it has been waiting to hear. That we give our awareness of the divine back to life, because that is the most precious thing you have. That you will take with you when you die. Almost everything else will go. Your awareness of the divine. You bring it with you into this world, and then through this strange mystery of life you forget it, and then it is given back to you, and then you work on yourselves to keep it, to hold it, so it grows, so you can learn to live in the presence of God. That is the most precious thing you have, your awareness of the divine, however it is for you. Whether it is just seeing a beautiful flower, or a beautiful woman, or a beautiful man, or hearing music and being remembered, or a direct inner experience of God, it doesn't matter, it's all the same. It's being able to be present in the divine within yourself and within life. That is your most precious thing. Say very little else has actually much value, because that you will take with you. That shines in the night. That is your light. When you are asleep, that light is shining. That is what the angels see. When you pray, it is that light that draws their attention to help you. Not your complaints. That is the light. Because you can see it in the inner worlds, You can even hear it, because the light of every human being has the music of the soul of that human being. Some people can hear the music of their own soul. And the more you work on yourself, the louder it gets, the purer the sound. And so the angels stop what they are doing and they listen to it. And if you put a prayer into the song of your soul, then they hear that prayer, because they are attuned to that music. Very simple, very, very beautiful. And that we can give to the world. That is what really means being with the world really is. This dialogue of our own soul with the soul of the world, our own prayer with the world that needs our prayer. Because long ago we were given guardianship of this world. Human race was given guardianship of this world. And of course nowadays, because we just see a physical world, we think that means physical guardianship. But that was never the understanding. Just like if somebody comes and makes a real commitment to the path I represent, I'm not just going to feed them organic food. They want their soul to be cared for. They want there to be a real understanding of why they are here and their purpose in life. A real speaking of heart to heart. And so to be guardian of the world means also to look after the world spiritually. This, of course, used to be the responsibility of shamans and priests and priestesses. But most of the priests and priestesses got killed off rather a long time ago, and the Catholic Church had other interests, and the shamans retired to the rainforest. And so it is now really for those whose hearts hear that call, who are awakened by the cry of life, by the soul calling to them, to help them to uncover its real mystery and its real purpose, to help the world to wake up. And I think that is our responsibility at this time of transition, crisis, transformation, is not to look in the debris of this past civilization. Enough people are doing that. But there is another work to be done, which is to help the world to wake up. And this is really a relationship with this energy at the core of creation that is changing very, very quickly. And it is calling to people whose souls are in harmony with it. Maybe once in the past, lifetimes ago, you did a service to the world. Maybe once in this lifetime or another lifetime, the world did a service to you. Maybe there is a real connection within you, not to this surface life, but to something deeper. And because of this connection, the world can speak to you. The soul of the world can speak to you. And it doesn't need us to do anything. Not initially. It just needs us to be present. This is something we find very, very difficult in our culture. If you knew how subversive our culture is, it would be horrifying you. It has created this whole web of distractions. So we're never allowed to be present, just so we cannot actually participate in life. So life can be controlled, because only if you are present do you have access to life. If you are not present, you have access to your own fantasies, to your dreams, to your memories, but you don't have access to life. And there is a certain work to be done in life. Something in life needs to be woken up. This energy at the core of creation that is going through this transformation, that is changing, that is metamorphosizing. It needs this spark of our remembrance of our divine nature, because that then will awake it to its remembrance of its divine nature. It's a very simple thing. We were woken up to our divine nature and our life changed completely. Completely different once you are awake to your divine nature. There is hope where there used to be despair. There are possibilities when before there is just effort. And we can give this spark of our awakening into life, so life can awaken. So life can remember why it is here, and in that awareness it can take this next step in its evolution. And the world is very powerful, and we have forgotten that, because we have been frightened of its power, just as we are frightened of the power of the goddess. So we have created this kind of cardboard cutout version of the world, and pretended that it isn't alive, and it doesn't have power, and it can't transform, and there is no magic. And yet in our hearts, in our souls, we know that is not the case. We know the world is infinitely old, is infinitely magical, is tremendously powerful. Now, also, if it wakes up, it is good to be on the right side of the world. Because well, you know, the world has, like anything, it has a terrible and demonic side to it. It has a beautiful side to it. It can create the most beautiful flowers and birds and songs and colors and music. And it can be overwhelmingly destructive. Whether naturally, through earthquakes and hurricanes, or through giving human beings bombs and all sorts of things. It is all life. You know, once you step into the arena of oneness, you have to wake up to the fact that life is not good. It is incredibly beautiful and incredibly terrible. And everything belongs to oneness. The cry of the child being killed and the cry of the child being born, it is all one. Every bit of pollution is one. Just like the song of every songbird is one. It is all one. But there is a way to be with this oneness, to be with this energy of life, to work together with it. In the ancient way that human beings for millennia worked with it, I always say it's only in the last 1,000 years we decided to forget. We imprisoned the world in these incredibly negative thought forms. And the world obliged. And the world turned away from us. And the world withdrew, casting only a shadow over us, which we now call pollution, which is like the shadow of the world. So we need to return to that magical center within our own being, within the being of life. And again, it's not something you have to do. It's something you have to be in your own center. And if you're in your own center, you will find it is completely alive. It is extraordinary, because you are divine being. You are thousands of years old, and you will live for thousands of years. And you carry all the memories of the past and all the secrets of the future. And the world is too. Yes, we have limited ourselves. We have put ourselves in a box and labeled ourselves. And one of the purposes of all spiritual work is to take off the labels and open the box. And then to discover what it is that is actually there, which is not what your parents or your culture or your school teachers told you, but something completely, completely different, unbelievable. And I'm sure you've all had those moments of awe when you realized how extraordinary the real you is. And the world is the same, except it is 10,000 times more beautiful, more powerful, more terrible. But it is waiting for us to work with it. It is waiting for a recognition of what it is. Just like if somebody recognizes who you really are, you change completely. This is traditionally one of the great gifts of a spiritual teacher, is they recognize the disciple as they really are. And often that is for the first time in that life somebody sees you as you really are. And then so many things fall away, so much wakes up. Somebody sees you for what you really are. Somebody knows your real name. And we can also recognize the world for what it really is. The world does not need a lot of people to do that. Just like you don't need 100 people to do that. In your life, 1 is enough. 2 if you are lucky. That is enough. Then something in you starts to sing. And what you don't realize is that song is your own spiritual life waking up. Is your own soul singing its song, which is why you are here. That song is why you are here. That song contains the mystery of your whole life. And maybe if we are lucky, the world will start to wake up and the world will start to sing. And as I have told some of you before, I happen to have a memory of that song when it was here before, many thousands of years ago. I remember when the world was alive, when the world was singing. I think there are echoes of this in the way the Aboriginals travel across their land following these dream lines that they have in songs, that they follow the landscape through song. Because there was a time when everything in the world was singing. It was incredibly beautiful. It was a much simpler life. It was many, many thousands of years ago. There were, of course, many less people here than there are now. But I don't think that really matters, because magic is not about numbers. The song of the soul doesn't matter how many people are there. But that, when the world was singing, it was so beautiful. The world was young, it was alive, it was singing, and everything was part of its song. And it was the most natural way to be. They still have echoes of this in some tribal cultures where the women sing the song of the child to the child. And it happens at birth. And then when the child gets into trouble later in life, all the women come round again and they sing the child his song with his name again, to reconnect that child with his own essential purpose or her own essential purpose in life. It's very beautiful. The women just come together and they sing the child his name. And then the child remembers why it is here, remembers its divine purpose, not as an idea, not as a concept, but as a song, as music, as something that is alive, as something that carries the mystery of the Creator and the mystery of creation. And there is a possibility that the world could wake up and start to sing again. And that song is, of course, not just beautiful, but incredibly powerful. Just like the real song of a human being. If a human being starts to sing their real song, it untangles many of the problems in their life, because it is a magical song. Because what happens? What are problems? They are entanglements. It's like a web that catches around you. Catching energy, catching thought forms, catching ideas, catching emotions are caught into this web until it suffocates you. And once you start to sing your own song, then that song untangles that. It's beautiful to watch it in a human being. I've had the privilege to watch it. To watch that hidden song within a human being work its metamorphosis of the human being, change the human being, till the human being starts to shine again, till the light in the human being comes back. That is what changes a human being. And if the world starts to sing again, it's very, very beautiful and very, very powerful magic in that song. I personally think that song will take away much of the pollution in the world. It's very powerful, it's very magical. It can dissolve the particles of creation, just like our own song dissolves the blocks in us. Our own song can also, there used to be, probably not understood anymore, it could also heal the body physically. You put the song into the light, into the cells of the body. They wake up in a different way. These are ancient magical healing techniques. It's like breathing on a human being with the name of God. It goes into the cells and the cells respond because it speaks to the divine nature within the cells of the body. And when the divine nature is spoken to, then it responds. But we have forgotten. We have forgotten the world is alive. We have forgotten the world is a spiritual being. We have forgotten that it has a soul. And we have certainly forgotten that that soul can sing. And maybe we need to remember. Maybe we need to remember the ancient promise that we made to the world, that we were here to help it, that we were here to help its evolution, that we are here not for ourselves, not for our own survival, but for a much deeper purpose. Otherwise, why did we become human beings? And to respect that core of life, to respect it deeply within ourselves and within life. And then you say to life, how can you use me in your time of crisis? Share with me some of your secrets so I can be of service to you. We don't even think of that now. But life has so many secrets. Life is this magical, magical being. Share with me some of your secrets. Share with me some of your mystery. Take me where I need to be. That is service to life at its core, the core of creation. So your light connects to the core that is within life, and then this really alchemical process, this mystery, this relationship starts to take place. As I said, there are ancient esoteric teachings about this. It is not something I kind of made up, but they have been forgotten like so much has been forgotten. And it is coming alive in a different way, because it is not written in books. It is not even passed in oral tradition anymore. But it is present in life, because life has its own teachings, life has its own wisdom. And this is not the first time life has been through a very deep crisis. You must remember that. Life has its own wisdom of how to evolve through this crisis. We just need to listen, to be present, and to say yes. And I always add, and to have a sense of humor, because it's not going to be the way you think it's going to be. The world is not some project, you know? That's why in Sufi tradition, it's like Native American tradition, we always have to have a sense of humor. If you don't have a sense of humor, do not come this way. I always say there is a heaven for good, sensible, well-meaning people who do good, sensible, well-meaning things. But it's a little bit boring. Because, I mean, what a mess this world is. You know, today they are dropping bombs in Israel and they are killing each other in Baghdad and what they are not doing. What this crazy, crazy world is doing. And it's sad and it's terrible, but it is also about something completely, completely different. If we dare to step out of our own little image of how we think it is, and let life share itself with us, as it is waiting to do. As it does not need 10,000 people. It just needs a few crazy people who are prepared to say yes to life. Not to an idea of life, not to a plan about life. Please, I have no idea what is going to happen. I have been shown possibilities, that is all. And life has its secrets, just like a woman has her secrets. They are deep secrets, they are ancient secrets, and sometimes they are so sweet and sometimes they are so terrible. But they need our presence. And they need us to trust life. I was just told that just now. I hadn't thought of that. They need us to trust life. We have lost the trust of life. I don't know why. All ancient civilizations always trusted life. They would not do anything if they did not trust life. And we do not trust life anymore. We think we have to fix it. We think we know better. To me, that is just masculine hubris. We have to trust life. When you give your light to somebody, you trust them. We trust life. Just like we trust the beloved. Do with me as thou wilt. For those who want something safe and contained, this work is not for them. But if you can trust life as the divine being it is, so ancient, ancient of days, beautiful, terrible, magical, then she can show us some of her secrets. And she can use us as only she knows how to use us. So I want to now have a little meditation in which we go into the core of our own self, where we are connected directly to the core of creation. Because while I have been talking to you, I have been making a connection in each of those people here who are interested in it, to this spiritual being that is the world. And now it is for you to feel that connection within your heart, within your soul, to be present in it. To be present in that meeting place that is this oneness of your soul and the soul of the world. This place where the world can speak to you. The world can be with you as a spiritual being she is, as the center of power and beauty that she is. So go to this deep place within yourself. And allow the world to be with you. So we do that for half an hour.